Last month, I watched my neighbor throw away $300 worth of thriving tomato plants, not because of pests or disease, but because of one invisible mistake that 90% of container gardeners make without even knowing it. You might be making it right now. Hey there, garden friend. Welcome back to Serene Green Gardens. If you're new here, I'm so glad you found us. This is your judgment-free zone for real gardening advice that actually works without emptying your wallet. Today we're exposing 7 container gardening mistakes that are quietly destroying your crops. Real quick, if you've ever felt frustrated watching a container plant struggle for no obvious reason, hit that like button. And subscribe so you never miss our budget-friendly garden tips. Trust me, what you're about to learn will save you so much money and heartbreak. Mistake number 1, the root circle of death. When you buy plants from a nursery, their roots are circling around inside those small pots. Here's the killer mistake: transplanting that root ball directly into a bigger container without breaking up those circling roots. Most people think the roots will just spread out naturally into the new soil. They don't. Those roots keep circling forever, even in a huge container with fresh soil everywhere. It's like they're programmed to stay in that pattern. So even though your plant looks healthy above ground, below the surface it's essentially still trapped in that tiny nursery pot pattern. The roots never spread out to access all that beautiful soil and nutrients you provided. What happens next? Your plant grows for a few weeks, maybe produces some early fruit, then it just stalls. Growth slows down, leaves start yellowing from the inside out. Fruit production stops. You're adding fertilizer, checking for pests, adjusting water, doing everything right, but nothing works because the problem is underground where you can't see it. When my neighbor finally pulled up her failing tomatoes, the root ball was still the exact shape of the nursery pot, just sitting there in the middle of unused soil. $300 worth of plants wasted. The fix: be brave with those roots. Take your plant out and rough up that root ball with your fingers. Break up that circular pattern. Pull those outer roots loose, even if it feels aggressive. If it's really bound up, make 3 or 4 vertical cuts down the sides with a clean knife, about an inch deep. I know it feels wrong, like you're hurting your plant, but those roots are already damaged from being confined. You're not hurting them, you're freeing them from a prison that will kill the whole plant. After you rough up the roots, spread them outward as you place the plant in your container. Think of it like untangling hair. You want those roots pointing in different directions, not wrapped in a ball. Then water deeply. That initial watering helps the disturbed roots make contact with the new soil. The plant might look sad for a day or two, but within a week, it'll take off. Do this every single time you transplant. This one step will transform your container garden success rate. Mistake number 2, the false bottom trap. Everyone knows containers need drainage holes, but here's the mistake: putting rocks, gravel, or broken pottery at the bottom of your pot before adding soil. Nearly every beginning gardener does this because it sounds logical, except it does the exact opposite of what you want. Here's what actually happens. Water doesn't just drain through that rock layer. Instead, it creates what's called a perched water table. The water sits in the soil right above the rock layer because of the texture change. Your roots end up sitting in a constantly wet, oxygen-poor zone. It's like creating a swamp at the bottom of your container while thinking you're improving drainage. Your upper soil might feel fine, even dry on top, but down below, it's a soggy mess. Roots start rotting. Fungal issues develop. Your plants show overwatering signs even though you're being careful. The bigger and deeper your container, the worse this problem becomes. The fix: skip the rocks entirely. If your container has drainage holes, all you need is soil straight to the bottom. Good potting mix drains perfectly fine on its own. That's what it's designed to do. Worried about soil falling through large holes? Put a coffee filter, piece of newspaper, or window screen over the hole before adding soil. This lets water drain freely while keeping soil in place. After a few waterings, the paper breaks down, but your roots have formed a natural mat by then. If your container is really deep, like 2 feet or more, fill the bottom portion with empty plastic bottles turned upside down to take up space, then put soil on top. This reduces soil depth without creating drainage problems. Your soil should go from top to bottom with nothing in between. Simple, effective, and your roots will breathe properly. Mistake number 3, the fertilizer fake-out. Most container gardeners use high nitrogen fertilizer because it makes plants green and leafy. For fruiting crops like tomatoes, peppers, squash, and cucumbers, too much nitrogen at the wrong time is a disaster. Here's what happens. You fertilize with high nitrogen. Your plant responds beautifully, getting bushy with gorgeous deep green foliage. You feel like a gardening genius. But then flowering time comes and you get barely any flowers, or flowers drop off without forming fruit. Meanwhile, your plant just keeps making more leaves. All that nitrogen signals the plant to keep building structure and making leaves. The plant thinks it's not ready to reproduce yet, so it puts minimal energy into flowers and fruit. You end up with massive, beautiful plants that produce maybe 6 tomatoes all season when they should be getting 50. The fix. Match your fertilizer to what your plant is doing. When plants are young, balanced fertilizer like 10-10-10 is fine. But the moment you see the first flower buds forming, switch to a bloom formula fertilizer. Look for higher phosphorus, that middle number, in the NPK ratio, something like 5-10-10 or 5-10-5. That phosphorus promotes flower production and fruit development. Liquid fertilizers make this easy because you can control exactly when you switch. The day you see flower buds, change your feeding strategy. Follow the package directions for dilution, usually every week or two. If you're using slow-release granules, scratch some bloom booster into the top inch of soil when flowering starts. Your harvest will literally double or triple just from this one change. Also, don't overdo it. More fertilizer doesn't equal more fruit. It equals burned roots and dead plants. Follow the package instructions. If anything, go slightly weaker than recommended. Container plants are sensitive. Quick pause. Drop a comment telling me which mistake you've been making. No judgment here. Hit that like button if you're learning something new, and subscribe for more uncommon gardening tips that actually work. Okay, let's keep going. Mistake number 4. The soil reuse trap container. Soil gets exhausted after one growing season. Not just low on nutrients, but the actual physical structure breaks down. That fluffy potting mix becomes dense and compacted. It doesn't hold air properly. It doesn't drain right anymore. Here's the mistake. Dumping out your old soil, mixing in some compost or fertilizer, and thinking it's good as new. You're essentially asking your new plants to grow in sawdust. The structure is shot. Your roots suffocate no matter how much you fertilize. Think about what happens to that soil over a season. Roots grow through it. Water washes through it. It gets compacted from watering. The organic matter breaks down. By the end of the season, what started as light and fluffy is now heavy and dense. You can literally feel the difference if you compare fresh potting mix to used stuff. Plants in reused soil start off okay, then progressively get worse. Leaves yellow. Growth is stunted. They just never thrive. And people blame themselves, thinking they're bad gardeners, when really it's the exhausted soil. The fix. After each season, your container soil needs serious rehabilitation or replacement. If you want to reuse it, don't use it straight. Mix it 50-50 with fresh potting mix. That way you're getting fresh structure and organic matter while recycling some of your old soil. Or better yet, dump your used container soil into your garden beds where it can benefit from being mixed with native soil and having earthworms work through it. Then start fresh in your containers with a new potting mix. I know it feels wasteful, and potting mix isn't cheap. But trying to reuse exhausted soil is like trying to run a marathon in worn-out shoes. You might save money up front, but you'll pay for it in failed crops and frustration. Here's a money-saving tip, though. Buy potting mix in bulk at the end of the season when it goes on sale. Store it in a sealed container or trash can so it stays dry. That way you're ready for spring and you paid half price. Also, you can refresh your soil mid-season if you're growing something with a long season like tomatoes or peppers. Every 6 weeks or so, carefully scratch a handful of fresh compost into the top few inches of soil. This adds organic matter and some structure back without completely replacing everything. Mistake number 5. The size illusion. People dramatically underestimate how much root space fruiting vegetables actually need. A tomato in a 5-gallon bucket might survive, but it won't thrive. It'll never reach its potential. Here's what happens. The plant grows fine at first. You're excited. It's flowering, setting fruit, everything looks great. Then, around mid-season, it hits a wall. Growth slows to almost nothing. Fruit stays small, lower leaves start yellowing and dying off. You're watering, fertilizing, doing everything right, but the container is simply too small. The roots have maxed out their space, and there's nowhere left to go. It's like asking an adult to live in a closet. They might survive, but they're not going to flourish. Plants are the same way. They need room to spread their roots and access enough soil to support their growth. The worst part is that undersized containers make everything else harder. They dry out faster, so you have to water constantly. They run out of nutrients faster, so you have to fertilize more. They're more sensitive to heat and cold. You're fighting an uphill battle from day one. The fix: go bigger than you think you need. Way bigger. Here are the minimum sizes for common vegetables, and these are minimums, not ideals. Tomatoes need at least 10 to 15 gallons. That's like an 18-inch diameter pot. Indeterminate varieties that keep growing all season really want 20 gallons or more. Those little decorative tomato pots you see at garden centers, they're fine for tiny cherry tomatoes, but that's it. Peppers need 7 to 10 gallons minimum. They have smaller root systems than tomatoes, but they still need room. Cucumbers need 10 gallons, and they really prefer 15 if you can manage it. They're heavy feeders with extensive roots. Squash and zucchini need at least 10 gallons, preferably 15. Yes, even for one plant. These are massive feeders. Beans can work in smaller containers, maybe 5 gallons, but you'll only get a few plants in there. Lettuce and greens are actually perfect for smaller containers. 3 to 5 gallons works great because they have shallow roots. If you can't go bigger, grow fewer plants. One properly sized tomato plant in a 15-gallon container will outproduce 3 cramped plants in 5-gallon buckets every single time. It's not even close. Think about it this way. In the ground, a tomato plant's roots spread 3 to 4 feet in every direction. You're asking it to live in a bucket. The least you can do is give it a big bucket. Bigger containers also make your life easier. They hold more water, so you're not watering 3 times a day in summer. They hold more nutrients. They buffer temperature changes better. They're just easier all around. Mistake number 6, the watering routine. Trap. Here's the mistake that kills more container plants than almost anything else: watering on a schedule. Every morning is like clockwork, or every other day, whatever your routine is. Container plants don't care about your schedule. On a cool, cloudy, humid day, your container might not need any water. On a hot, sunny, windy day, that same container might need water twice. When you water by routine, you're either overwatering or underwatering constantly, sometimes both in the same week, and your plants suffer. Here's what's really wild. Inconsistent watering, going from bone dry to soaking wet over and over, is what causes most of the problems people blame on disease or deficiency. Blossoms end rot in tomatoes and peppers. That's calcium uptake issues from inconsistent moisture. Bitter cucumbers, water stress, cracked tomatoes. The plant absorbed water too fast after being dry. Split carrots, same thing. It's not a disease. It's not a pest. It's not a nutrient deficiency you can fix with fertilizer. It's water stress from yo-yo moisture levels. Plus, when you sprinkle a little water every single day, you train your plant's roots to stay shallow near the surface where the water is. Then, on a hot day when that surface dries out fast, your plant has no deep roots to tap into moisture lower in the pot. It wilts dramatically and you panic, thinking it needs even more frequent watering, which makes the problem worse. The fix: water based on what your plant actually needs, not what day it is. Before you water, stick your finger 2 inches deep into the soil. If it's dry down there, water deeply until it drains out the bottom. If it's still moist, leave it alone and check again tomorrow. Get a cheap moisture meter if you don't trust your finger test. They're like $8 to $10 and they take all the guesswork out. Stick it in the soil. If it reads dry, water. If it reads moist, don't. Simple. And when you do water, water deeply. I mean really soak that container until water pours out the drainage holes. This does 3 important things. First, it ensures the entire root zone gets moisture, not just the top inch. Second, it flushes out any salt buildup from fertilizer. Third, it encourages roots to grow deep and strong. Light, frequent watering creates weak, dependent plants. Deep, infrequent watering creates strong, resilient plants that can handle stress. Now, you'll water more frequently in summer than spring. more frequently for a big plant full of fruit than a small seedling, more frequently in terracotta pots than plastic, because terracotta breathes and dries faster. That's normal. Just pay attention to what the soil is telling you rather than what the calendar says. One more tip: water in the morning if possible. This gives plants all day to use that water, and any excess moisture on the leaves can evaporate. Evening watering isn't terrible, but it can promote fungal issues because plants sit wet all night. Mistake number 7. The variety victim. This is the one almost nobody talks about, but it makes a massive difference. Not all plant varieties are bred for container growing. Some need huge root systems and full ground space to perform well. When you force them into pots, they limp along producing disappointing harvests. And you think you're doing something wrong when really it's just the wrong variety. Full-size beefsteak tomatoes, for example, are bred to grow 6 to 8 feet tall with root systems to match. You can technically grow them in containers, but they'll never perform like they would in the ground. You'll get maybe 2 or 3 tomatoes all season and wonder what went wrong. Meanwhile, someone with a determinate or dwarf variety in the same size container is harvesting buckets of fruit because their plant was actually designed for that growing situation. The same goes for cucumbers. Vining cucumbers want to sprawl 15 feet in every direction. Bush cucumbers stay compact and put their energy into fruit production in a small space. Pole beans versus bush beans. Full-size pumpkins versus pie pumpkins. Standard melons versus personal-size varieties. It's not that the compact varieties are inferior or produce less. They're just engineered differently. They're designed to be productive in limited space instead of spreading out forever. The fix: choose varieties specifically bred for container growing. Seed packets and plant tags tell you this information. Actually read them before you buy. For tomatoes, look for words like determinate, dwarf, patio, compact, or bush. Determinate tomatoes grow to a certain height and stop, usually 3 to 4 feet. They set all their fruit in a shorter window, which is actually perfect for containers. Dwarf varieties stay even smaller, some only 2 feet tall, and they're incredibly productive for their size. Some great container tomato varieties: Patio Princess, Bush Early Girl, Tiny Tim, Tumbling Tom. These aren't inferior to beefsteaks, they're just different. And in a container, they'll outperform a regular tomato every time. For peppers, look for compact varieties. Most peppers actually do pretty well in containers, but compact types are even better. California Wonder, Lipstick, and Lunchbox. Peppers are all great for pots. For cucumbers, absolutely get bush varieties unless you have a huge container and a trellis. Bush Champion, Space Master, and Salad Bush are all bred for containers. They produce just as many cucumbers, they just do it in a fraction of the space. For beans, choose bush beans, unless you specifically want to set up a trellis. Bush Blue Lake, Contender, and Provider are all excellent, and they'll produce heavily in a 5-gallon bucket. For herbs, most are naturally fine in containers, but look for compact basil varieties rather than those that grow 3 feet tall. The variety information is right there on the seed packet or plant tag. It'll say things like, ideal for containers, or compact variety perfect for small spaces, or determinate growth habit. Pay attention to that. It matters more than almost anything else when it comes to container success. Don't feel like you're settling for lesser plants. You're choosing smarter plants for your situation. That's just good gardening. There you have it. 7 container gardening mistakes that are silently destroying crops everywhere. Root circles, false bottoms, wrong fertilizer timing, dead soil, undersized containers, routine watering, and wrong varieties. The beautiful thing? Every single one has a simple fix that costs little to nothing. You don't need expensive equipment or fancy techniques. You just need to stop doing the things that don't work and start doing the things that do. Take what you learned today and apply it this growing season. Rough up those roots, skip the rocks, switch your fertilizer when flowering starts. Use fresh or refreshed soil. Go bigger on container size. Water when needed, not by schedule. Choose container-friendly varieties. Do these 7 things and watch your harvest transform. If this video helped you, leave a comment letting me know which tip was most valuable. Give it a thumbs up so more gardeners can find this information. And subscribe to Serene Green Gardens for more real, practical advice that actually works without breaking the bank. Until next time, keep growing, keep learning, and remember, great gardens don't require big budgets, just smart choices. Happy gardening, friend!